We're helping him through that process, and he's not the first person in this league to go through it. And the good part is I know that it's in there and it'll come out.
Jay Woodcroft with some words of encouragement for Jesse Puljujärvi post-game last night. Asked about some of those comments that Puljujärvi made in the Finnish newspaper. Didn't like hearing his player being that down. Now, the Oilers as a group definitely were not down last night. Took advantage of a team that they should have taken advantage of, but at the end of the day, they got the job done. Welcome to Got Your Back, YEG, brought to you by Mr. Dirk. Located just off White Avenue and 102nd Street, Mr. Dirk is your one-stop shop for all your clothing needs, and I mean all of them. If you're a businessman needing to look sharp at your next meeting, or if you want to sharpen up that look around the office, they've got a wide selection of amazing suits, shirts, ties, shoes, everything you need to make a statement that you are on top of your game. And if casual is what you need, they got plenty of that as well. Jeans, pants, shirts, sweaters, belts, shoes. Mr. Dirk is a great spot for quality clothing of all types. Bright and early, Struddy, you're looking way more awake than you should at this hour, pal.
I'm a morning guy. Don't take a look at me at 9 o'clock at night. I'm already asleep.
I know you're a morning guy. I could tell that when I got a text message from you saying, hey, that 6:45 shoot time, it's not going to work. So we have two options. We can do it post-game or early, like 5. So here we are. Oh, man. Sterling and I, we have something we need to take up with you here, buddy.
What's that?
I don't want to throw you too far under the bus because it's early, and just a reminder that this podcast is on YouTube, so if people want to go check out the video version, they can. Not sure if you caught Struddy on the broadcast last night or not, but listen, buddy, this pocket square, like this situation you got had going last night with the pocket square, you gotta, or get off the pod here. You gotta, I'll just say it, you gotta shit or get off the pod here with the pocket square, Struddy. You can't do whatever this is supposed to be.
It's just I like to leave a little something to the imagination, right? Just kind of cultivate that identity of mine that is just sexy but not showing too much. So
yeah,
I'm sure Sterling and I'm sure I'll be getting a very angry text from him, but
yeah,
I'll back myself up here.
He did send so me being the helpful friend and podcast partner that I am here, I actually did send that to Sterling last night, and. Let's see, you must not have checked our group chat. He said, what is that? A piece of chewing gum, which I thought was a good line. Well done, Sterling.
Yeah.
And then he also sent along a guide to how to properly fold a pocket square. So that courtesy Sterling Dirk over at Mr. Dirk. So you take a quick little look at that. I struggle with pocket squares too, Struds. They're not an easy thing to figure out, and it's easy to just chuck them in there and forget about them. But you can't.
Right. No, I got to be more aggressive, pull it out. Show the whole world what I got.
Yeah.
Another 3-4 inches for sure.
Okay, we're clipping that for sure. We're clipping that for sure. Oh, boy, Struds. You just did it again to yourself. Oh, boy. We're going to have to roll the tape back on that last 10 seconds. Goodness sakes. Hey, did you see Tage Thompson last night? This is ridiculous what this guy's doing, Struds. Yeah. What is happening? Yeah. 6'7". Well, and for those who didn't see, it was ended up being 5 goals and an assist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I remember when the trade happened. He seemed to be the big piece, and then it took him a long time to kind of get going. But you're seeing so much skill out of smaller players, and Craig Button is the one who brought it up one day. I don't remember if it was. I think it was on the Gregor show. And I said, "What's next?" He goes, "I expect big, skilled players, super skilled players to come out." And, this is, I think, the first one recently. Obviously, Mary Lemieux was pretty skilled, Lindros. But this guy is, he's really on fire. And for Buffalo, it's great to see because that trade, they took a lot of heat over the Ryan O'Reilly trade.
And then they took heat over the signing when they signed him to a long-term deal in the offseason. Right. So multiple times they took heat over Tage Thompson, and multiple times they bet on this guy. And now, I want to say, so in some places he's listed at 6'6". And in some places he's listed at 6'7". I want to call him 6'7", because if he's 6'7", I mean that's next level, and we can say most skilled 6'7" player ever. Like I was looking through a list. I think Eric Daze was in and around that range, But I mean, I've never seen skill like that on a 6'7" frame ever.
Yeah, the challenge I think when you're defending a guy like that is the range he has with his stick handling. His arms are so long, his stick so long. It's really hard for a D-man. You know, you're trying to keep a guy out and trying to get your stick on the puck, and his stick is now 6 inches, a foot past yours if you're a 5'10" defenseman. So it makes a big difference. That range is really hard. I think that's one of the things that made Joe Thornton so dangerous was the length, just his reach. And doesn't mean he's a better stick counter. It's just that he can keep it away from you as a D-man, and it gives him more time to make play.
Yeah, it's something else. If you haven't seen the highlights, go take a look, because he's not just banging them in from the side of the net. He's got a bullet for a shot. He's got absolutely butter hands. Pretty ridiculous what he's able to do. Just to give people a sense of what's coming here on the podcast, we're going to break down the Oiler game here coming up next. But following that, in our takeaways segment with Sherwood Buick GMC, we're going to talk about the article that Jesse Puljujärvi did with the Finnish reporter back home. Some of the comments that he made, definitely struggling with his confidence. And Struds and I will dig into that in the next segment. So if you wonder why we're not chatting about that yet, it's because it's coming up in segment number 2. But for now, let's get to the breakdown of last night's game, brought to you by DLR Vinyl Products. DLR Vinyl supplies some of the nicest maintenance-free decking and fencing products out there. If you've always had a wood fence or deck in your backyard and you're thinking, maybe time for change, give some thought to going maintenance-free with DLR. When you put it in, it stays in. And it's beautiful. There's no more sanding, no more staining, no more worrying about upkeep. It really is maintenance-free. It looks fantastic the day it goes in, and it stays that way for decades. If you're a contractor that installs fences, definitely look into the post-pounding system that they use as well. No more messing around with concrete and digging big holes. It's a better product, easier to work with. DLR Vinyl can show you how. They got locations in Calgary and in Edmonton. Clean Costin with the old Gordie Howe hat trick last night, Struddy. I didn't have that on the bingo card, though physically he's kind of been around it for the last few games. So good for him. You know, Cassian's a pretty tough customer. And what do you think overall of the night for Costin? And did you think that he had that in him? Because we've seen him stare people down. We've seen him be physical. Not everyone can do that.
I thought he had a good game. I think he's been solid since he's come here. I think he understands what he has to be. He has to be big and physical. And then when chance or when opportunity arises, be opportunistic with his offense. Because that goal he scored last night, that's a real goal. His first goal, I thought he threw it at the net, and it's kind of lucky it goes in. I think that was Minnesota, but that was a real goal yesterday. So just because you're being physical and using your big body doesn't mean you can't be skilled at the same time. And I like what he's doing. I like the approach he's got to his game. The challenge for him that has been through his short career here in North America is to continue it every night. Consistency. But, I think his teammates maybe stood up and took notice when he see that he's kind of engaged with the other team's top player. Then he takes on Cassian, and, Cassian kind of has no choice there but to go after him. But I think I'm impressed with what I've seen. My concern would be consistency from him. If he can do that, the Oilers may have just found something here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's a first-round pick. He had, obviously, the skill and was noticed back then to get drafted that high. So there's some pedigree there from a skill standpoint. And with those guys, often, you make a great point, it's just all about consistency. And we've seen his game up and down a fair amount since he got here. But he's put together some consistent play. To the Weiss Johnson soundbox, here he is. We interviewed him after the game. He was tons of fun, speaks decent English. Not fantastic, but decent enough to have a great conversation. And I'll tell you, Struds, people won't be able to see this, but partway through this clip, he kind of wipes his nose, and his knuckles are covered in blood. Like his hand was covered in blood. It was pretty awesome. Clem Costin here in the Weiss Johnson soundbox.
I'm not looking for a fight. I just want to play hockey. I just want to enjoy the hockey. So, but if fights coming, I'm not going away. So, yeah.
Sometimes there's something beautifully honest with a player who he can't necessarily doesn't have total command of the language, so he can't think of the words to BS about something. He's got to go straight at it. I'm not looking for a fight. I don't want to fight. But he also said there was no way to get away from that fight. I had to just But you like the fact that he's willing to, because I mean Cassian is known, and he's a pretty tough customer around the league. And actually, we haven't seen this much from the Oilers. It's not all about fighting, but to be willing to turn around and drop your gloves and say, okay, this is happening, to me, that shows you something when a guy has that in him.
Well, Shagar, I think the most important detail here we've overlooked is the fact that Cassian was upset about something an Oiler did. How often, how many times in the first whatever number of games they've played have we seen someone upset the other team? Where the other team's like, we don't like that you did that. We want to come after you. It has been a very rare occurrence. I can't really think of too many off the top of my head here. So that's not a good sign. And when you're playing physical, when you're being aggressive rather than reacting, you're going to get these types of reaction from players. And I like that. I like the fact that he got a response from the other team, because it's not something we've seen.
We're not going to dig super deep into last night's game because, here Arizona's on the last of a monstrous 33-day road trip. We see what their roster looks like. No disrespect to them. They're just in a different phase right now. So the Oilers, let's summarize it by saying the Oilers had a very vulnerable opponent. And the good sign is they took advantage and had some killer instinct in last night's game, sensing that from their opponent.
The Arizona Coyotes reminded me of the guy whose wife tells him to come to a party. Listen, I want you to come with me. I need you to come to this dinner party.
Okay.
And he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to be there. But he says to be a good husband, he goes there, and he's an absolute dud. Doesn't bring any energy, no conversation, doesn't have a drink, just sits in the corner and just bitches about the fact that he's there and has zero energy. That's what
kind of hard on the fellas. It's a long road trip.
They did not. I know, but they just didn't want to be there. Let's just call it what it was. They did not want to be there. And I've been in those games too. It's not fun. You're so close to being home in your own bed, seeing your wife, girlfriend, kids, whatever it is, your whatever you want to see. And they just laid one last night, a massive egg. And they're right. They are not a good lineup. And it's only going to get worse for them. But they did not show up. Pre-game, you talk to some people, they're like, oh, they're a hardworking team. They were not a hardworking team. They were on the bus last night, and that's fine. These games are going to happen. But the Oilers, you're right. They came out, and what I liked is they didn't give them any hope. They didn't give them any chance. They kind of got on the board early, the early power play goal, and it's like, okay, boys, this isn't our night. And then it just got worse from there.
Evan Bouchard benched last game because of some shoddy defensive play, and that was a strong benching. We talked about this previously on the podcast. That was a strong statement. That staff does not do that to regular players very often. And so a really stern message sent. I look at last night's game, and again, keeping in mind the competition, and Evan Bouchard played 22 minutes. Was basically, I think Barry maybe played more. 22-40 for Tyson Barry. But 22 minutes of opportunity to dig himself out, which is the coach. That's not an accident, Struds. That's the coaching staff's way of saying, all right, we used the stick on you before. Here's the carrot. Now dig yourself out. What did you think of that messaging from them and what you saw from Bouchard?
Well, they also gave him some power play one time, right? You got out there with the big group. I thought, I love the messaging that said, okay, we're going to let you know that this is wrong, and now we're going to put you out there. We're going to play you a lot. We're not going to play you, an insignificant number of minutes. And again, you got to understand the opposition. If this was a top team, maybe he doesn't quite get out that much, but that's the opportunity that's in front of them. So they make the most of it. I'm sure there might have been some conversations after the game. Hey, we liked what you see here, or maybe tomorrow or today, there'd be some conversation with them. This is what I'd like to see, and just positive reinforcement and get him feeling good about himself. And not that he has no confidence like some other members of the team, but I think that it's just got to be reinforced about what you like about his game. This is what we specifically like that you did when you didn't have the puck. With the puck, I'm not worried about that. It's when he doesn't have the puck. That's when we really want to kind of reinforce what he's done well. So strong message both in back-to-back games, really, from Jay and Dave Manson.
I liked a few of the decisions that he made. You could tell he was skating around out there trying to think defense first. There were a couple of times where he took the puck up ice where he might normally try and go a little further with it or make a different play, and instead he dumped it in and backed off. There were a couple of times where he was along the offensive blue line where you could tell he was gauging a situation and erred on the side of caution, backing off. And I was watching him really close, so maybe he was doing some of these little things before, and I just wasn't watching him as close. But I do think that he played the game last night trying to avoid the big defensive mistake, and I think for the most part he did. Almost shot the puck at his own net on the first shift,
Yeah.
which would have been like, can you imagine the podcast today if he'd accidentally done that? But didn't seem to faze him, and I thought it was a good night. What are you seeing from Broberg here? Is it just me, or is he really coming along?
Yeah, I sure love the idea of what he can be. And, as you go into the NHL, at first you have to think, can I belong, right? Or do I belong here? And I remember going through that. It took, a little bit of time, but you realize that, you have spurts and games and moments where you're like, God, I can play with these guys. And then after a while, it's like, okay, can I actually be one of them and impose my game on other players? And I think we're almost in that phase for Broberg. And what I see from him is that he's going to impose his game as far as the way he skates, and that really helps him defend. The way he transitions the puck, moves the puck up to his buddies. I don't see his game being one that is going to be really flashy, Erik Karlsson all over the ice, making all these great plays. I see him making a lot of great subtle plays in a very kind of understated way. And I think we're starting to see that from him. I really want to see him use his feet to defend. I want to see him use his feet to get pucks out of trouble, and then use his feet to quickly pass the puck up. If he can do those things, man, the Oilers will really have found something, or not found something, but they'll be on track to what he needs to be.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's seldom a guy fully has a spot to lose at training camp and just flat out loses it. Like normally guys that are penciled in, it's very seldom that they would just drop off the map, and he did. My understanding is there was an injury at training camp. There were more mobility issues at training camp. I'm not sure if over the summer he trained a little different, but he had lost that extra, zap in his step that we definitely saw last night. But good for him, because he looks like he's skating as well as he ever has now. His mobility is really noticeable at this level. It wasn't during training camp. So whatever he was lacking when he showed up for a really important training camp, the most important of his career, he found. He picked the ball up. He's taken advantage of opportunity, and looks good so far for the Oilers. Lastly, Jakob Chychrun, always trade talk surrounding him. I will say for the record, I don't think that the Oiler organization is that high on the idea of bringing Jakob Chychrun in. I think it's pretty high asset costs. Don't know if they're absolutely in love with the player necessarily, although he's off to a pretty good start here. What did you see from him last night?
Yeah, I had my eyes on him very clearly, and he moves the puck well. He's a mobile guy. He's big. He's strong, but I don't think he brings the element the Oilers require right now, and that is someone who is a banger, someone who will be physical and make life uncomfortable. I just don't think that's in his line in his game, at least from what I've seen in the past, and including last night. I see someone like Joel Edmondson. And it doesn't have to be him exactly, but that guy, when I see him going into the corner against Hyman and then, cross-checking Hyman in the head, not that I'm in favor of dirty hockey, but he's a hard guy to play against, right? And I think the Oilers need that, in their own zone and specifically on the penalty kill, just that harder element. And I don't think Chychrun brings that. Is Chychrun, I think he's better than Kulak, but is he that much better? He's better, different than Nurse, but is he that much different than Nurse as far as the player? And then Broberg, on that left side, aren't they all kind of like that? So I think they need someone who's different and stouter defensively. And maybe Nurse should be that. I think Nurse should be that more often. But I just don't, when I look at what they might have to give up and the difference it'll make in the lineup, I don't think it really brings it.
Yeah, definitely acquisition costs would be lower to bring in somebody who plays the game with more defensive mindset, right? I'm not sure what that looks like. My guess is it'll be a player with term, though. I think the idea that it's going to be a rental, my sense is that they'll be looking for a player that has term. It's more of a hockey trade. By the way, the Board of Governor meetings are coming up, and I will be there.
Nice.
They expect to get a bit more of a sense of where the cap is going to be. Now, this year's a little bit different because they've tied it to whether or not escrow gets fully paid back. So there's a few other elements that are in play here, but just think about if they're going to raise the cap $3-4 million or more, just how much that frees up the trade market, how much more comfortable teams will be making trades for players with term. And the Oilers are on that list of teams that are going to be watching with great interest what happens to the salary cap. One more time here to the Weiss Johnson Soundbox. We'll remind you it's a great time of year to look into a furnace for the garage, and they got a great deal going over at Weiss Johnson till the end of January. No GST on all garage heater installations. and it is absolutely worth the money. I just had one put in, and I love it. Every morning, go out to the garage fridge to grab the almond milk, and nice and toasty in there. I used to have to run through my garage. It was so cold. The cold on the bare feet, just annoying. My wife getting into a freezing cold car. She hated that. No more. Nice and toasty in the Rishaug garage. Weiss Johnson, no GST on all garage heater installations until the end of January. So give them a shout, 780-463-3096. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins appreciating the game that Clem Costin has brought as well.
Since he's come here, he's been great. Big body, obviously. Plays physical and can shoot the puck really well. So tonight, seeing him get rewarded and being able to mix it up like that at the end, I mean, obviously he's got some toughness. Big kid for sure, but definitely happy to see him have a good night tonight.
And he did. You know who else had a good night? Nugent-Hopkins had a good night. He's off to a nice, tidy little start here. Looks like he's on pace for career high in goals. Well, he definitely is. And he has been pretty solid this year for the Oilers, Struds. You liked what you've seen from Nugent-Hopkins?
Yeah, with the puck shooting it, he looks a lot more confident. And he's not shooting all those from distance. It seemed like in last year, he was always from a little bit too far out. He's got a quick shot. I wouldn't say it's a bomb. So he's not a guy that can shoot from a lot of distance consistently and hope to score. He's been in and around the net more. And I like that from Nuge. You got to get there. You got to get in and around that blue paint and find a way to score the goals that are a little easier than from 20, 30 feet.
Yep, great point. All right, lots more to come here on the podcast. In our next segment, we're going to dive into Jesse Puljujärvi, the article he did with the Finnish Reporter, some of the comments he made. I asked Jay Woodcroft about those comments last night, so we'll discuss all of that and more in our next segment. That was The Breakdown, brought to you by DLR Vinyl Products, and you were listening to Got Your Back, courtesy Mr. Dirk. We'll be back. Checking in with Sterling Dirk inside the beautiful Mr. Dirk shop. People ask me all the time, who is the Mr. Dirk, Sterling? I know it's not you. Who's the original?
So my grandfather was a tailor, and he came over to Canada in 1940s, opened his freestanding shop in 1965. So Mr. Dirk's an ode to my grandfather. He was a tailor, and we keep that ethos of like quality service and community embedded in our store every day. So if you come in, you walk in, you're gonna get a friendly face, a smile, and we're gonna get you suited up head to toe, get you some jeans, shoes, whatever you need. We got you covered.
1939 is on the emblem, and it means something. Truly local. MrDirk.com is where you can see all of their merchandise, or visit them in store right off White Avenue and 102nd Street. All right, time now for the breakdown, brought to you by Sherwood Buick GMC, just off Baseline Road on the way into Sherwood Park. It's the #1 GMC dealership in all of Canada for 5 years running. Don't know if you've had a chance to see the all-new redesigned Sierra 1500 with its wide variety of trim levels. It's a spectacular truck. I have the Elevation, the Denali Ultimate, regarded as the most advanced and luxurious in its class. Sherwood Buick GMC, just off Baseline Road on the way into Sherwood Park. They got inventory as well. A lot of places are struggling with that right now. You can't get your hands on a truck. Well, they have them. They also have a ton of great used vehicles for you as well. One of the biggest inventories in the city. They are wide open for trades. They'll even just straight up buy your car from you if you're selling. So lots of options if you visit Sherwood Buick GMC. Okay, in our takeaways segment today, Struds, we're going to dive into Jesse Puljujärvi. I'm going to quickly read some quotes here for those who did not see the article. So Mark Spector yesterday wrote an article after pulling these comments out of a Finnish newspaper, an interview that Jesse Puljujärvi did. Here's a few quotes of what Jesse Puljujärvi had to say. Of course, I'd like to be a productive top-line player. But right now, it looks like I can't do that in the NHL, maybe some other league. I'm trying to find out who I am as a player, since it looks like I don't fit anywhere here. I've started checking a lot and lead the team in hits. At least that's some positive. It takes a lot to play with a superstar like him, being McDavid. You have to win battles and make plays at the same time. It's a high-quality game, and it takes a good player. You have to be a really good player to play with him. It's hard to tell why I'm not scoring. I've been thinking about it a lot. I scored earlier, and now I think I'm older, more experienced, and a better player, yet I'm not scoring. If you play with Connor, you have to score. Maybe I just don't have it. Now, understanding that it's, translated from a Finnish article, and maybe sometimes in the inflection in the translations can be mistaken. Struds, what was your gut when you read all of that yesterday?
He sounds defeated. He sounds completely defeated, and I agree. There are, and I've been interviewed by other countries and retranslated English, and it does sound more depressing than maybe it actually is. But just the general tone of it, he sounds like a defeated player. With zero confidence, like not maybe actually negative confidence right now, and it's sad. I feel bad for him, right? It's not fun, and this isn't about a European player being in Canada and him being lonely or misled, or like he's been around long enough now, like he's an adult. He's been around the league more. It's just a human being who has completely lost all confidence in what he can do, and I think it goes back a little bit to maybe his desire to be more than he is as far as a goal scorer. I do think he views himself as a goal scorer, and maybe his representation does as well. And I think good representation, and that means agent. I think an agent has to be honest with their player, kind of get them to understand where they fit into the hockey hierarchy. And I don't know that between Jesse and his representation, I feel like they think he's more of a goal scorer. I think he's a 15 to 20 goal scorer. So yeah, that's a goal scorer.
You do?
But I think he can score 15 to 20. I do think he can. But I don't see him much over that. And, to me, a goal scorer is like 25, 40, 50. That's goal scorer. But I think he can do 15 to 20. But right now, I think he's got zero confidence. And judging from that article, I don't think I'm off.
Okay, a couple of elements here, different ways to attack this. First and foremost, just from the human side, we've interviewed Jesse lots. He's a upbeat guy, and he's lots of fun. And so when you hear somebody speaking about themselves this way, I feel similar when I read that to the way I felt when we were interviewing Jack Campbell after that game, and he called his play pathetic, like he was just beating himself up. Just on a human level, it's kind of jarring. You're like, oh man, he's being really hard on himself. So certainly felt that yesterday when you read that article, and you feel some sympathy just on a human level for a guy that's clearly feeling that way and going through that. Part two of this thought, though, is I don't think this does any good. I really don't. And as a journalist, it's kind of counterintuitive for me to criticize a guy for being honest or giving a really good, honest interview. And I respect the fact that he was this honest. But in the big picture of simply just trying to make this situation better, there are a couple of things he said in here that are, again, honest. But let's look at it from the perspective of, does this make the situation better, right? So you have the element, maybe in some other league, right? Looks like I can't do that in NHL, maybe some other league. Well, if Ken Holland's trying to trade Jesse Puljujärvi right now, and you're a GM that's considering this guy, and you read this, you're like, well, he's gone to Finland next year then, right? Like, he's gone, isn't he? I mean, just to suggest that, maybe in some other league. And then the other part here, and I just wonder how this would resonate with McDavid. It takes a lot to play with a superstar like him. You have to win battles and make plays at the same time. It takes a good player. You have to be really good to play with him. If you play with Connor, you have to score. Maybe I just don't have it. I mean, I don't know. Do we need to ask McDavid some questions now about, what do you think when you hear Jesse Puljujärvi talk? So now, players are going to have to answer questions about him saying these things too. Mm-hmm. So I'm just not sure that this goes too far in making the situation any better at all.
That's a really, really good point. Good insight. And, he's right though. When you're playing with Connor McDavid, you are supposed to score. That's the job. Like but if you believe you're a top line player, you're supposed to score. So if you believe you are, that's your job. That's the description. So I feel bad for Jesse. I think that if we go back a number of years, he's been mishandled by the organization to start, maybe built up. I don't know if the team built him, but he built himself up to be something maybe that he feels and not publicly, but I think just internally. And then, as far as Connor, do you even want him on your wing? like you hear these comments. Do you even want him? If you look at the walk in and you see that 13's beside 97, you're like, this guy doesn't even think he can play there or in this league. Why is he beside me? Right. So I just, the thing's a mess. Jay's going to try to do everything he can to continue to build them up. But I think Jesse, last year when he was on the third line, I loved that he was there. I thought he was doing a good job. He was doing well. Everyone wanted to move him up. I'm like, why move him up? Let him drive his own line. Let him be the man. This guy needs to be filled with confidence. And I think when McLeod comes back, I'd love to see him parked beside McLeod for quite a while. Another line mate that can really support and keep them together for an extended period of time to really give them some good minutes and hopefully build that line and specifically Puljujärvi up.
So you talked about early in his career, and I believe that this goes back even as far as that. Here he is 24 years of age, but things that happen when you're young matter and your development is important. So when Puljujärvi arrived, and in his first game there, it was 28 games, 16-17 was 28 games in the NHL, 39 in the American Hockey League. And he had 28 points in those 39 games in the American Hockey League. I believe that the Oilers wanted to have him in the American Hockey League longer in his rookie season, and they felt that he needed seasoning. And to your point about where the player and his agent maybe view themselves, I think there was some pushback on that, which, hey, a fourth overall pick, they're going to want to be in the NHL, right? And your agent, I guess, some would argue, is doing his job when he kind of lets it be known that you're not thrilled and not happy. And I think there was pushback on the American Hockey League for Jesse. And I think that may have caused him some problems in the early days too, because you've got guys on that team that they grinded their way through the American Hockey League. It's a good, respectable league. And if you've got a player and the perception is he thinks he doesn't belong there or doesn't need to go there, I think there's problems that are caused there. So, kind of a little bit of maybe not understanding the importance of going and developing properly in that league. And listen, when they force you to go, they force you to go. There's nothing you can do. You just get suspended. But it started a little bit then. And then, even after this last year, the idea that he would express disappointment at his ice time and his opportunity when we all saw what happened in the playoffs, views himself as a top six player and doesn't necessarily want to be here if he's not going to be used that way. Well, I think there have been a couple of stops along the way here where his vision of where he belongs and where he fits has been different than what's quite frankly real. And in this situation, you'd think you would just want a guy that's like, put me in, coach, I'll play wherever you want. Let's get her going, whatever you need, right? And I don't know that that's the way that it's been.
Yeah, and you can put he and Yamamoto in the same boat. I mean, both of them now are making about the same amount of money, and they're not producing offensively. Now, to be fair, Yamamoto's been out, but if you want to do your points by 60 or whatever you want to call it, neither one is really getting it done offensively. So, but you can look at the way they go. Yamamoto seems to, now to be fair, he's not doing interviews in other countries, but Yamamoto seems to have more of that idea. I'm just going to go and play. I'm just going to figure this out as we go. And I thought Yamamoto had a good game last night, but again, playing against a team that was already on the plane back to Arizona. But for Yessa, it's just he just play. Like I think he overthinks things and he wants to get these results. He's not even really getting good looks right now, to score. And it's, last night I watched, I don't think he had a few shots, but nothing there I thought was a golden opportunity. Let's just compare it to Costin.
He had one in the slot maybe, and I can't remember if he misfired or what happened. There was one, I think.
But you look at Costin, he gets one chance and he absolutely, that's a legit goal that Costin scores, right? Catches
7 shot attempts last night for Puljujärvi, 3 shots, 3 attempts blocked and 1 missed net. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, and I don't remember them ending being great chances. I might be wrong, but off the top of my head. But I think of Costin, just grabs it, shoots it, boom, goal. Like just no messing around, no asking for help. This is done. So for Jesse, I just like him just go and play. And yes, he's being more physical. He's going to the front of the net, which I think is important for him. But I get the sense he's overthinking it. Then you get home and there's an 8-2 game. You don't have any points. I'm sure that just keeps creeping in your mind and going and just kind of takes you down this rabbit hole that's not positive for anybody. So, Jay, Yessa, Connor, the agent, they all have a lot of work. Ken Holland to help get this guy out of this funk that it sounds like he's in and through this interview.
Go to the Weiss Johnson soundbox here. I asked Jay Woodcroft post-game about Puljujärvi's comments.
He's a valued member of our team, somebody who's much appreciated, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We don't just measure his game in how many goals he has through 27 games. We measure if he's taking a good shift, if he's affecting things on a power play, and if he's being physical and using the frame that he's been given. So, we're helping him through that process, and he's not the first person in this league to go through it. And the good part is I know that it's in there and it'll come out. I didn't love hearing that because I want all of our players confident. And, there's ebbs and flows in an 82 game schedule. But what we're focusing on with Jesse is giving him the tools he needs to feel confident.
I mean, if you're a head coach and you hear your player do that interview, probably similar to when Jack Campbell did that interview, what does the messaging need to be? Do you bring a guy in and do you sit him down and do you say like, hey man, are you okay? And what can we do to help you out? And is it supportive and because that's just the way it needs to be? Or does there maybe need to be a little bit of tough love in there too? Like you listen to Ken Holland's comments from Speck's article and he's like, it's a tough league. That was basically Ken Holland's, response to it. So do you go a little bit of a softer approach here, or do you say, yeah, it's tough and a big part of this is on you to push your way through it?
Well, I think it has to be addressed. I think it needs to be talked about, right? Because it's like the elephant in the room. But I think you can sit down with them and just, I always like to, as a player, when coaches would say, okay, what are you doing when you're playing well? Like, and not just talk about it. Wow, he's being physical, using his big body. Show me the clips where I'm doing what you want me to do, or where you think I'm playing well. And then I can give you feedback or pushback and say, well, I think I can do this. I think I can do that. And just have that conversation so everyone's on the same page and understanding what it's all about. The question can be asked, are you doing, are you shooting pucks before practice? Are you shooting pucks after practice? Are you working on that part? There's a shooting gallery in the Oilers dressing room. Are you using that? Like, I don't know if he is or not. I'm not in that dressing room and I'm not at practices. So, the good goal scorers or guys that want to score, they're working on it all the time. All the guys I played on, they were always working on their shot before practice, after practice, in the dressing room, at home. Kucherov has a shooting gallery in his garage in Tampa Bay. So if you want to score goals, shoot pucks. That's generally how it works. You got to do more of it. So it just becomes natural instinct. So, that's one way that he can help himself. And again, I don't know if he is or not on a consistent basis. Like it's kind of like the person who goes on the diet and has a great day on Tuesday and then the rest of the week is a cheat day. Doesn't really make a difference. It's got to be consistent delivery and so it has an impact in your game. But I just think the whole situation right now is just a complete mess. And it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to get worse, but it's going to be a hard slog to get this out to where he thinks he should be.
At practice is quite a bit. And what I would say on Puljujärvi is I tweeted a video one day of Leon Draisaitl just feathering backhanded passes into the slot for Puljujärvi, and he was just grabbing them and shooting them and grabbing them and shooting them. And the reason I tweeted that video is because it was notable to me that he was doing that. Yeah. It wasn't something that we see every day. Now, Puljujärvi does put in extra work at times at practice, but more often than you'd see him working on his balance and footwork and stuff like that. So what I've seen over the years is a little bit more of a focus on that sort of stuff, and definitely not a dogged determination when practice ends to go and work on those puck handling and shooting skills. And I think this is an opportunity for the organization to maybe drive that message home to him. When you call him in and maybe you soft sell it and you say, hey, are you okay? And what do you need? And you do that. But then you also say, okay, here's the way this is going to go. This is an opportunity for one of the assistant coaches too, to jump in and make a significant difference. Maybe don't give him a choice anymore. Maybe you say, okay, Jesse, that's Mark Stewart over there. Every single day at practice, because you're only playing 10, 12 minutes a night. Yeah. So you got lots of energy, bud. Every day, you got 20 extra minutes. And this coach is going to commit to working with you. And you did the interview. It's clear how you feel. Now it's time for action, changes. What can you change to elicit a different result? And I think if we don't see Jesse Puljujärvi putting in more effort every single day now to try and get himself out of this, I think that's a mistake and a missed opportunity for him. And I think that it's something the organization should really push him to do. Because you tell me, extra work, is it something that you are flat out just told to do? Or do you kind of have to take your own initiative and do it, and the organization sits there and takes notice of whether you do or don't?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I couldn't understand why someone wouldn't do extra. Honestly, at practice, I remember we'd have practice 25 minutes, and you're not going all 25, right? So you have to, and in those practices, that's general skills, skating, some passing. So if you work the specific skills you need to do it after practice. And not to toot my own horn, but before every practice and after every practice, I would do something. And there was always things I was working on. And now, did we have skilled coaches kicking around like they do now? No. But I still found a way to try to work on my game. And I thought it brought me confidence because I'd already been through that situation, like puck retrievals. I did them before every pregame skate. Every single game I did them. And or like if we had a skate. And I always felt good about it. Like, I'm okay, I've already been through this. But so for Puljujärvi, one area I'd work on is just coming off the top of the circle, catch a pass, shoot, boom, walk off off the half circle, catch it, shoot it. Like, I would do that, commit to 50 times on each side because he gets it, and it's fumbleitis and it's trying to get it. Like, he has the skill. Now you just have to be able to do it so it's just confident, and you do it every single time. So the opportunity is there, and that's the great thing. You have access to all these great coaches, and they're just looking around to do something with you. And if you commit to it, and maybe it's time for the team to say, hey, this is what we're doing from now on.
Not optional anymore. Put him on a program to develop his skill. By the way, some teams actually travel a straight out skill development coach. Right. Like, his job is to go on at the end of practice and work specifically on skills with the lower minute players or the higher minute guys too, if there's things they want to work on. Not everybody does it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. The Oilers have lots of coaches, and I think they share it around. But I also think Jay Woodcroft is a coach who delegates quite a bit to his staff. I think they're probably busy. And so I wonder if, had there been a specific skills coach whose job it was to focus right in on specific skills with each player at the end of practice, had they had that for the last 3 or 4 years, could situations like this with what we're seeing with Puljujärvi maybe be avoided if there's more of a focus put on it specifically and the player doesn't have the choice? Maybe it's something for the organization to look at. I'm not sure if it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but some teams do this. And maybe it's a program that would benefit some of these young players that the Oilers currently have. It's an uncomfortable situation. You feel bad for Puljujärvi here. We'll see if he can dig himself out of this. Evan Bouchard did a good job digging himself out last night. It'll be interesting to see what he gives them moving forward too. Oilers with one more game on this homestand Friday night against the Minnesota. Is it the Minnesota Wild? Where's my schedule there? Yeah, Minnesota Wild on Friday night. Good stuff, Struddy. I know you got a busy day. We'll let you rip, pal. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you this weekend.
Yeah, sounds good. Go sort out those pocket squares, man. Come on. Regional television. Go get that sorted.
I will. I'm on it right now.
See you, pal. All right, folks. Thanks so much. That'll wrap up the podcast. A big thanks to our sponsors, Mr. Dirk, Sherwood Buick GMC, DLR Vinyl Products, and Weiss Johnson as well. Have yourselves a fantastic Thursday, and we'll check in after Friday night's game. Take care.